Thank you so much for coming. Like David mentioned, this has been a journey. By the way, this is not my mainstream research. This is my passion. And my passion is to tell the stories of the developing countries. And this passion I started back in 1990s, I would say. I got a phone call from one of the former colleagues. I used to teach at Wharton before I came here, so I got a phone call from him. And both of us have very similar backgrounds. He was born and raised in Israel before Israel was Israel. So both of us are very old people now. And we have very similar backgrounds. His father was also a businessman in Haifa. So he called me one day. He says, listen, I got a phone call from United Nations. There is a group there called Group of 66 in China. And these people would like us to come to their conference in Costa Rica. Costa Rica sounded very exciting. I said, what the heck do we have to do to go there? He said, they want us to come and make a presentation that how can we stop people from the developing countries from begging. Did you hear that? How can we stop these people from begging? I said, what does that mean? He said, that's all they told me. And since both of us are marketing professors, and he says, I guess what they were saying was that how can we tell these people stop begging and focus more on entrepreneurship and so on and so forth. And needless to say, he was upset, I was upset. I said, Jerry, this is insult, you know. Our parents worked very hard to really push us to the school, and you went to Stanford, I went to Texas. I mean, you know, God has been very kind to both of us. Anyhow, after 2 weeks, he calls me back. He says, thank God, they canceled the presentation. I was relieved. But that got me started thinking in terms of what do these people mean by developing countries, and what are they saying that we have to stop these countries from begging? This is, by the way, before China and India and all these countries became the hot stuff. And so that's my first book, 86% Solution. The reason it's called 86% is because solution is because 86% of the world population lives in developing countries. And the definition also, then I had to dig through what do we mean by developing countries? When does a developing country becomes a developed nation? And after I went through a lot of this literature, finally I found a very good definition used by the McKinsey, the people, and the person who was the head of McKinsey in Japan, because he was trying to really brag about the Japanese in the 1990s. And the definition they have is the GDP per capita of 10,000 US dollars. That is that when a country has achieved their economy is GDP per capita is 10,000 US dollars, is called a developed nation. Not interesting. I said, so big deal. By the way, if somebody's making $10,000 a year in the US, what do we call that person? Poor. So for the rest of the world, 10,000 per year means that you are a developed nation now. All right? Not interesting. I said, you know, at that time there were 6 billion people. I added all the numbers. It turned out to be about 86%. And then I asked, next question I started asking myself was, I said, you know, since 1948, after the Second World War, how many people have managed to become a developed nation other than the Japan? No, that was an interesting question to me. Because see, all the countries are becoming a developed nation, then there's no discussion. There's no need for me to write a book or worry about the developing countries. So can you guess how many countries or which countries have managed to become a developed nation other than Japan since 1948? Come on. Yeah, sir.
9.
Okay, which one?
0. 15.
Okay, which one?
Thailand.
Thailand is not there.
Doesn't count. Okay. Korea, Singapore.
South Korea, Singapore are there.
Guess Hong Kong doesn't count.
Hong Kong doesn't count. Taiwan, yes, did. But it doesn't show up in the official statistics because they don't keep statistics on them. Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Israel.
Israel, yes.
Saudi Arabia.
Yes, they did. 5-6 years ago, finding the 15,000 US dollars, yes. As a matter of fact, all the GCC countries are there now.
Turkey.
No? Getting, huh? Kuwait, yeah, I said all the GCC countries, yeah. Isn't that interesting? Since 1948, almost 64 years old, 64 years ago, and when we think about that question, we have a tough time in coming up with the countries. As a matter of fact, ladies and gentlemen, since 1948, less than 300 million people, other than the Japanese, have managed to become part of a nation with a GDP per capita is more than 10,000 US dollars. So that led me to thinking that if the people living the 14%, people like you and I who are so blessed that we don't realize how blessed we are, that if we had to grow, we have no choice but get engaged in the 86% of the world, but not from the charity point of view. We have to look at this 86% of the people in the developing countries, close to about 6 billion people now, as consumers. And then I argue in the 86% of the solution book that it's not easy for us to get engaged, because if our mindset is that these guys are beggars, and they are poor, we won't be able to engage. And this is what I call as a 2,400 square feet mindset. Anybody knows why this is 2,400 square feet mindset?
Size of a standard house.
Oh, you're so smart. That is the average size of the house in the United States, 2,400 square feet. The moment you have the 2,400 square feet, and by the way, all the marketing textbooks that we have, all the courses that we teach, not only here at the McCombs School, but the rest of the country, doesn't matter where you go, they are all written for 2,400 square feet house. So what's so special about 2,400 square feet home? How many cars do you need? Two. How many television do you need? 5, 4. What is the biggest size of the television do you have at home? 56 inches. How many cats and dogs do you have at home? Come on. 2? At least 2? Ladies and gentlemen, only 1.8% lives in 2,400 square feet home, and throw in some cats and dogs. And cats and dogs are $40 billion industry, which may be bigger than the GDP of some of the countries in Africa. No, that's our mindset. Buy one, get one free. Change your car every 3 years. Okay, buy a new laptop. Get excited about what Apple is going to do next time. Look at the stock market and don't go to sleep at night. Rest of the world doesn't live like this. As a matter of fact, even if you look at Japan, average size is 900 square feet. China, if you can get an apartment for 750 square feet, you're on the top of the world. Our students here around this campus lives in the apartment which are 750 square feet. The rest of the world doesn't live like that. So that's the argument that I had, that how do we change our mindset? Then the criticism came that I don't have much to say about Africa, and I really didn't. Because most of the discussion that I had was related to Asia, Latin America, the Eastern Europe at that time. They were still developing. And then I spent about 3 years traveling in Africa. I was not convinced that I was going to find anything. As a matter of fact, I didn't want to go. And interesting enough, criticism did not come from the US, because we had classified Africa only where all the famous actors and actresses or the singers go. You know, the rest of us have nothing to do with Africa. The criticism really came from the Europeans. Then I kept on thinking, how do I make a case about Africa? And sure enough, when I looked at all the more than 50 countries, added their GDP, added the population, God behold, I discovered that Africa's population was as much as China and India, about 1 billion. And the total economy was bigger than India. GDP per capita was bigger than India. There were at least 16, 17 countries that had GDP per capita more than China at that time. And then I traveled for 3 years, and I was amazed. So going back to the comment from the United Nations, that how can we stop begging? Ladies and gentlemen, that place was full of the entrepreneurs. There was somebody who was trying to wipe the tears of a mother. There was somebody who was trying to give encouragement to a mother, your child will grow okay, let me give you the multivitamins. There was somebody who was telling a mother that I can give you medicine. There was somebody who was telling a mother, I can help you with education. And these were all the people from the private sector, both multinational as well as the local. As a matter of fact, Coca-Cola got interested in helping me. They were really keen that I go and write a book on Africa. Can anybody guess why? Why Coca-Cola was so keen that I go there? They were the first company to sign up with me.
They wanted their products over there, so.
They've been there for 90 years.
Huge market.
They've been there for 90 years. They already know that. Coca-Cola, by default, had become the largest supplier of condoms in Africa. Why? Because in 90 years, they had gone to every nook and corner of Africa. Their biggest advantage is the distribution. And so when the people were interested in Clinton, Clinton Institute and the Bush administration were interested in, and the private sector were interested in actually what to do about HIV and AIDS, guess who they call? Coca-Cola. And it's an amazing job that these guys did. They would show up in their bicycles, donkeys, trucks, even paddlers. These guys show up, they give a box of Coca-Cola. And by the way, here is a box of condoms. So it was amazing, and I was so happy that it changed the whole conversation about Africa. And after that, McKinsey started writing the articles. They never referred to the book, which was fine. The Economist, just 3 years before that, has written a cover page that this is really the dark continent. There's nothing going on here. As a matter of fact, economists refused to review the book. They said, we don't believe you. Washington Post refused to review the book. We don't believe you. New York Times refused to review the book. It says, you're not talking about the Darfur. There's nothing going on in Africa. Sure enough, 2 years after that, Economist came out with a special issue. They also had the title Africa Rising, and they had copied the cover. And in fact, one of my colleagues, Frankel, is sitting here. So he sent me that. He said, I was traveling. He said, have you seen this? Thanks, Frankel. It changed the whole conversation about Africa. Because when you look at these billion people as consumers, you realize, my God, there's a lot we have to offer these people. We have a lot to offer these people. And they're not beggars. Yes, some of them need help, but who doesn't need help? I mean, we have 6 million people in the state of Texas who don't even have health insurance. So let's not pretend that we don't need help. I mean, every time I go to the food bank here in Austin, Texas, I mean, I said, oh my God, there are really people in Austin, Texas who don't even have access to the food? Let's not kid each other. So when I was traveling in the Africa, I went to also North Africa. So I was in Morocco, I was in Algeria, I was in Tunisia, and then I also went to Egypt. And I kept on thinking, I said, my God, these are very exciting countries. So why we are having so much negative news about these countries? There must be something more going on in these countries other than all the negative news that we get from the media. And my 3 partners have been Coca-Cola, Unilever, and Procter & Gamble. They don't give me any money, but they help me to open the door, so I call them back. I say, hey guys, is there something going on there? He says, please, don't tell us you're going to write another book. I said, yes, I do. And the reason being that the Procter & Gamble and Unilever are the largest advertisers in the Arab world. Did you know that? Yes or no? So obviously these boys know the rest of the world doesn't know. People in Washington doesn't know that Unilever and Procter & Gamble are the largest advertisers. They don't know that Pepsi-Cola has 85% market share in Saudi Arabia. And these guys can't even pronounce the word P. The P is confused with B. So they call it Bipsy. And the Coca-Cola is called the other red drink. So obviously, Pepsi-Cola knows something that the guys in the State Department don't know. And so that started my journey. And what I'm going to do there is just give you the background, then I'll show you some of the things in the book. And then I'd like to spend most of this session just on the question and answers. First of all, this is an amazing, the Arab world is an amazing place. And if you look at this map here on the extreme, the right, you're going to see all this, the Bahrain and Oman and Kuwait. And by the way, they were all British colonies. And until these guys discovered oil and gas and all that, their biggest business used to be pearl. So they used to dive into the Gulf, bring out the pearls, and they were all British colonies. So as a matter of fact, they were using Indian rupees as a currency all the way up to Iraq. And the English were managing them from India. Okay? So guess who were the biggest buyer for the pearls that they were finding from the ocean? Who were buying those pearls? Exactly, Indian kings. The biggest market was really Indian kings. And if you go to the Qatar or you go to Kuwait, the probability is very high that the one of their grandmother is going to be a girl from Kerala, state of Kerala. Whether you're in Qatar or you're in Bahrain. So that's why you see a lot of people from state of Kerala actually in this. So there's a major influence from South Asia. You look at the north, and there is Turkey. And these people, they think that the most beautiful women come from Turkey and Iran. Man, they would love to marry these girls. And Turkey has such a major influence, which I'm going to tell you in a moment, especially their media. Okay? And then you go to the west, and right on the north, you see the France and Spain. Major influence. You go in the middle, in Egypt, and then you see Sub-Sahara. Major influence. As a matter of fact, that's how actually the Islam went to the rest of Africa. Okay? So let me tell you, point that I want to make is that this place is totally globally connected. As a matter of fact, it was an Arab from Oman, a sailor, who helped Vasco da Gama. Columbus' bad luck that he had not met any Arab. Vasco da Gama met an Arab from Oman, and that's how they discovered Goa. And everybody called the Arab a traitor. You'll see his picture in a moment. Why? Because these Arabs, along with the Jews, had the monopoly on the spices. They would sell in the Venice, and the rest of the Europeans hated it, and that's how they were trying to figure out how to go to India. Okay? It was not that easy, actually, to do the research here. Actually, I can't see this, so what did this say? Oh. So how to do the research? First, the time period is 4 hours. Okay, so you are in Oman, and then you go all the way to Morocco or Mauritania, time difference is 4 hours. So from the marketing point of view, the biggest confusion there is what is the prime time, which is also I'm going to tell you in a moment how they define the prime time there now. So this will be the case with us. I mean, from the New York to the California, we are 3 hours. So all these politicians are giving their speeches at 10 o'clock at night, so which is 9 o'clock here in Austin, Texas, and 7 o'clock in California, and who cares about Alaska and Hawaii? So these guys are trying to figure out if you have a pan-Arabic strategy, which they want to do, because 350 million people, you can't go to the tiny places and have a strategy for UAE and have a strategy for Mauritania and have a strategy for Bahrain or strategy for Kuwait and separate strategy for Egypt. They really want to take economy of scale, so they want to develop a pan-Arabic strategy. But how do you do that? You can't take advantage of the mass media when you have 4 hours different from one end to the other end. Second problem. How do you define the weekend? Okay, some places it's Thursday, Friday. Some places it's Friday, Saturday. Some places it's Saturday, Sunday. For heaven's sake, 4 days in a week, some part of the Arab world is shut down. So don't think about even having a conference call. 3 days a week. That's all you got. No, I'm totally confused. I go all the way here, from here, and you can imagine I'm trying to figure out, oh my God, if I arrive someplace on Thursday and I won't be able to meet somebody someplace if I arrive on Sunday, and then what do you do? And what happens if you're a Christian and you happen to be in a country like Egypt where Sunday is not a holiday? Then what do you do? Then you give people one more extra day. Take it off. Then you got 3 holidays. So how do you deal with this region? How do you do those conference calls? How do you set up those meetings? Very interesting, which I'm going to tell you how these people resolve that issue. Then this is the most interesting one. The most interesting one there is that when I was traveling, I had a tough time. Anybody here from the central administration from I saw Janet's name. Janet, are you here? From the travel management? Do you handle in the provost? You're in the provost office, right? Okay. So then how do you travel? So every time I have to file a request, answer comes, you can't go, or we have to take to the committee. And for some of the countries, I have to sign an affidavit that I'm going on my own. God bless if something happens to you. And then they gave me a travel insurance. And the only thing on that travel insurance is a phone number in London and phone number in Philadelphia. And so if I'm on Sudan, I don't know where the hell to call. Please come and rescue me. I'm not joking. Ultimately, out of the 22 countries in Arab League, I went to 18 of them. It took me about 3 years. I ended up having a lot of the backaches. And I wanted to go to Iraq, but I couldn't go to Iraq because I had run out of $1,500 in my research account. And our university does not have travel insurance for Iraq, along with North Korea, along with Afghanistan, and of course Iraq. But I was able to conduct those interviews. The point that I'm trying to raise here is that this region itself, you have to have a lot of patience to really, really to do business here. It's not just going to any of the European countries. So you have to admire Procter & Gamble and Unilever and Coca-Cola and Pepsi and L'Oreal and a whole bunch of other countries that how they have figured out how to go there. Sudan, for example, simply because of sanctions, you can't use your credit card. Okay, no credit card, no debit card, cash. So I told these guys, how the hell am I going to bring all that cash? I mean, I'm going to so many countries, I can't carry all that cash. Okay, so I mean, really tough luck. If you don't have the cash, you can forget it. My most interesting story is from Libya. And this was the only country, by the way, when I was traveling among all the 18 countries, I could see that something is going to happen here. I had no idea the Arab Spring was coming because I finished my journey in November 2010. The last countries I visited were actually Sudan and Syria and Libya. And sure enough, in 2011, I mean, I said, oh, I went there, I know this place, I have met these guys, I know these guys. Okay, so the Libya was the very interesting case. I won't spend too much time on this, why I got stuck there. But I landed at 6 o'clock there from Tunisia, and this is the chair they gave me to sit, and you see my bag, and you see the food they gave me, which I'm a vegetarian, which was, I don't know what the hell it was, but it definitely did not smell vegetarian. And so I sat there from 6 o'clock until 1 o'clock next day and they thought I was running away because they looked at my passport, Sudan visa, the Mauritania visa, Saudi Arabia visa. And they're looking at all those visas. He said, what the hell is wrong with this guy? And then it's an American passport. So they're totally confused. So they're looking at my face, listening to my accent, and going back to the passport. What a fun it was to confuse these guys. So I just sat there. But I won't bore you with all the details what happened. The point that I'm trying to mention there is that when you go to developing countries, you have to realize that it's not the business as usual. It requires determination. It requires local knowledge. And needless to say, once I left the airport, I had so much fun in Libya. I mean, so much fun in Libya. And once I realized that somebody else going to pay my bill in the Sudan, and I can reimburse them, Sudan was one of the best places that I visited. As a matter of fact, the best company that you will see in the book that I found in the entire Arab world was actually in Sudan. The best. Why? Imagine that you're a company, and they are the Coca-Cola bottlers in Sudan, based in Khartoum. They are also the distributors for Unilever. That's how I connected with them, for Lipton tea. So imagine you're operating in a country without sanctions. You don't have access to the foreign exchange. No access. And since there are sanctions, so Coca-Cola cannot help you, because Coca-Cola typically would help you to market your products. Coca-Cola cannot help you. Okay? You can't have a bank account. So how do you operate? At the same time, you want to show to the multinationals that I'm going to take care of your brand. I will take care of your brand. And so you will see a separate box in this company, DAL Group, D-A-L. This probably was as a matter of fact, even after traveling the rest of the Africa and the whole Arab world, and even Asia, I dare say that in all the developing countries that I have visited, this probably was the best company that I came across, and I'm so glad that I actually visited this company. Because I almost did not go to Sudan, where I found out that I can't use my credit card, can't use my debit card, I have to pay cash. I didn't know what I was going to do there. Okay, now why Arab world? I already mentioned to you that these guys are connected everywhere. So you go to the north, you go to the east, you go to the south, you go to the west. Over the time, they have been really totally connected with the rest of the world. Okay? Now, this is very interesting. Interesting part is that, which really fascinated me, and I knew that from many, many years ago. And as a matter of fact, even as a child, I always wanted to visit Israel, because I was just fascinated by Jerusalem, that how can so many smart people come in from such a tiny place? And so when you look at the whole world, you realize, my God, 2/3 of the world is religiously connected with this part of the world. So you look at all the Christians on this planet, you look at all the Muslims on this planet, and you look at the small community of the Jews. Can you believe more than 60% of us on this planet, which is almost like the more than 5 billion people on this planet, more than 5 billion, 5.6 or something like that, are religiously connected with this region. So either we want to go to all the holy places in Jerusalem, or we want to go to Saudi Arabia. And by the way, some of them do visit. And in a moment, I'm going to show you that the region gets more tourists than China and India combined together. In fact, 70 million tourists every year go to region. Next is France. And of course, some of the tourists are internal. But even if you discount that by half, 35 million, hi there.
You can set the computer up so you can see it from the floor.
Oh, thank you so much. Who's this guy?
Hello, sir.
How come it
Thank
took
you,
you?
Albert.
How come it took you 25 minutes to figure out that I need this?
Sorry.
Well, thank you so much.
Sure.
And so you realize that the 60%, 65% of the world population is connected with this region. And when you look at the Islamic world, there is only one direction they point to pray. So at least 1.4 million people, even half of them pray, they are pointing in this direction of this world. But my point was not religion. I was there to see how capitalism is alive and well. How can we make money there or somebody else is making money there? But like I said, that when I talk about 70 million people every year going to this region, it's not only the religious, and of course the religious, you know that for example, the most beautiful mosque that I have ever seen in my entire life, and I have seen many, many of them, was actually in Damascus. And when you see the pictures there, you would see the places. And then, of course, from the tourism point of view, I mean, all that you have to do is think about how many French people go to get their suntan in Morocco. And Morocco's second biggest source of income actually is really tourism, and they have a planned strategy to increase that number. Right now, it's about 11 million. This is done by the king with the help of the McKinsey consulting company, by the way. McKinsey has developed this plan, and McKinsey has office in Barcelona to help the king to actually develop this strategy of how to increase the tourism. And all these French show up. They are looking for the beaches, topless, bottomless, or whatever less they want. And a country like Morocco, sure enough, they'll give you the special beaches. The locals cannot go, but the French can go. I mean, this is a Muslim country, by the way. Okay? And then you look at the civilization. My God, who can forget about the pyramids? As a matter of fact, if you really talk to the Egyptians, they will tell you, we are not Arabs. As a matter of fact, you will see that in the book. I mean, they started claiming they are Arabs only about 50, 60 years ago. He said, no, we are not Arabs. We are Egyptians. Proud Egyptians. We have a history. We can tell you where we came from and who are we. Okay? And then, of course, you look at from the business point of view. When a business point of view, when you look at that places like Dubai and Abu Dhabi and all these places, my God, you're amazed. And then, by the way, this place, when you look at that, they have really, really a great history. Okay, how many of you, the Queen Sheba, you know? So where do you think Queen Sheba came from? No. Yemen. So there is a fight with Somalia, Yemen, but she comes from Yemen. How many of you know Sindbad? Have you heard Sindbad? So where does that guy come from? David, I'm the wrong audience. Oman. Okay, and here I'm just going to mention some of the names here. Cleopatra, of course, you know that she was in Alexandria. That comes from Egypt and all that. What else? Then Muhammad bin, I'm going to butcher his name. This is the guy who actually invented algebra. So as a matter of fact, if you go back and look at how the word algebra came from, that came from actually from him, what he used to call. My favorite one actually is really at the bottom. This is the guy, Ahmed bin Majid. This is the guy who helped the Vasco da Gama to discover India. So if you look at the map here, they came from Europe, and when they landed in South Africa, Columbus, of course, made the wrong turn. So he went to the Caribbean. Vasco da Gama was smart enough. In fact, he changed temporarily to become a Muslim. So he went to the court of Zanzibar, and Zanzibar and Oman have very close relationship. Okay? And as you can see, the Indian Ocean there, all the trade with India was done by these Arab traders and the Jewish community. And so he actually took him all the way to India, so that's how they discovered India. Europeans discovered India because of one Arab, and many people still consider him as a traitor. The point that I'm trying to raise there is that if you go back to their history, you realize that these guys were really, really globally connected. Okay? So now what the book is, I have many, many themes in the book, so I'm not going to go among all of them. So I want you to take just 3 minutes to just quickly skim through these 13 the bullets that I have, and I'm going to just pick one of them, and then I'm going to stop saying anything, and I will pick up any of these themes that you're interested in. Whether you're interested in how Islam is so important, whether women issues, Arab Spring, or whatever you're interested in, I'll happy to talk about that. So just take 3 minutes and quickly skim through this list. Kevin, are you done? You're a finance guy, I bet you are done. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're done, but there are many, many interesting things in the book. I mean, I just made the list there. I'm just going to only talk about the same thing I've been mentioned, how they're globally connected. Well, like I said, that they're globally connected from all the areas. So if you look at the western side, go to all the way to the west to Morocco and Mauritania, Algeria, guess what? These Muslim countries make beautiful wine. Beautiful wine. And as a matter of fact, other than Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, I had absolutely no the problem in finding a good glass of red wine anywhere in the region. And these were the good Muslims who were serving me a glass of red wine. Professor, we're so happy you're here. Have a great stay. Did you like your wine? And this company, actually, I visited Morocco. I asked the guy, I said, how do you reconcile? You know, that you're a Muslim country and you're making these red wines, and Algeria, Tunisia. Algerian wines, by the way, are very good. In fact, I brought some of them, but they emptied the bottles, so I have empty bottles in my office. So if you want to see, you know, what kind of wines they make. I said, how do you reconcile that? He says, Professor, business is business. You know, these 8 million French are coming and throw in once in a while an Indian American, and we're very happy to do it for you. I said, do you drink? Oh, of course not. I knew what the hell that meant. Of course not. So you look at the Turkish, the influence. The Turkey, as you know, is the quite liberal as compared to the rest of the countries, especially the GCC. Some of the best soap operas are actually made during the Ramadan time. And the Turks have a major influence. In fact, I met the guy who actually translates that in Syria. This was a show they did in 2005, 2007. And this is the Pan-Arabic network called MBC, Middle Eastern Broadcasting Corporation, owned by a Saudi family, based in Dubai. And they're really pushing the edge. I mean, I really mean they're pushing the edge. Okay, how far they can go. So this was a very interesting show. First, as you can see, both of them were very good looking. So this was a show. Has anybody heard about this show, Noor? This was, you have?
Yeah.
So what do you know?
When I was living in Damascus, my family would watch this all the time.
So you watch this all the time. And?
It was rather racy.
Would you say one more time?
It was a little racy.
And the racy coming from where? And all the Arabs were watching this with their families? Oh my God, how can that happen? These Arabs are watching racy TV? Something wrong. Let's call the State Department. It was amazing what happened, because a man is supposed to be a really big supporter of his wife. Go and do whatever you want to do. And man, this show, all the women in the Arab world were watching it. As a matter of fact, they'll tell you that divorce rate after the show went up. These women stood up. Haven't seen you this show? I mean, this guy treats his wife like that. Literally, they'll tell you the divorce rate went up. This season, during the Ramadan time, that is just a few months ago, NBC even went took one further step. And it was reported in New York Times and all that. So one of their Khalifa, after Muhammad expired, was Omar, and you're not supposed to show his face. They don't. I mean, as a respect, I mean, why would you do that? But NBC decided to actually make a show on his life. Okay, that was the most successful show this season, but they had a contract with the guy. Contract with the guy was that after this show, he cannot act for 5 years. Because since this guy was portraying as Omar, which is really a big deal. This would be like somebody really on a TV acting like a Jesus Christ, and the next day you will find out that he's acting in James Bond 007. I mean, you can't do that. Or in India, one guy is acting like let's say Krishna, and next day he's in a Bollywood movie chasing a girl. No. You can't do that. So these Turkish shows have a major influence. I'm talking about how globally connected these guys are. I mean, they are not enclosed. This actually, the picture I picked up actually in Oman, and major influence of state of Gujarat and state of Kerala, because from the one corner of Oman to the other corner that you see, this is a family from Gujarat, Khimji Ramdas, been there 110 years. They are now officially citizens of, it's a huge conglomerate. And they had this picture to show there's only 160 miles. So you can imagine the proximity to India and why there was such a major influence, South Asia. As a matter of fact, some of these Bollywood actresses are used as brand ambassadors. Anybody who knows about the Bollywood movies, who this lady is? Katrina Kaif. Now, how do you know that? Okay, you're in India. You are. This lady is a brand ambassador for ETIHAD Airlines. Why? Because there's a huge expat population there in UAE, and as a matter of fact, you go all the way to Morocco, people are watching her movies. My driver in Algeria kept on telling me, I said, I don't watch those movies that often. I don't know who the heck are you talking about. He said, Professor, you don't know about Katrina Kaif? You don't know about, what's the other one? Something Kapoor? I said, no, I don't know these ladies. I'm too old. You go to Morocco, L'Oreal. I'm with a multinational company, and I took this picture, and this is another very famous Indian actress, Aishwarya Rai, and they had posters all over the place. L'Oreal. So I asked my driver, I said, who's this lady? And he knew that I come from Austin, Texas. He says, you know, Professor, I thought you're originally from India. I said, yes. He said, I think you've been in the US too long. He said, don't you know who this girl is? And then you see some of the major entrepreneurs. Lulu is probably one of the most successful supermarkets that you will see, and started by an immigrant from Kerala. Gold is huge. And by the way, it's also very interesting. The men, as you know, the Muslim men, they don't wear the gold because it's supposed to be kind of girlish thing to do. So guess who's buying all this gold? Huh? Well, the women are buying this gold. And men, they love this gold. Who else is buying this gold? Expat. Which expat? South Asians. Man, they love gold. And so you see a lot of these entrepreneurs. Pure Gold, for example, I interviewed these guys. They are from Mumbai, and the largest, doing more than $1 billion, based in Dubai. And then, of course, I mentioned you the largest advertisers, how globally they are. And as a matter of fact, the only Arab countries that you see who are advertising these regions are our telecom companies, except for one company, which is, do you see Al Maraya any place there? The third from the bottom. Al Maraya, anybody knows about this company? How many of you think that a very successful dairy company could have come from Saudi Arabia? Raise your hands. A dairy farm, a dairy company, they manufacture cheese, they have milk, and all the milk products, that this is based in Saudi Arabia. Raise your hands. They are based in Saudi Arabia. And thank you very much, they're doing so well. And the question answer, if you ask me why this is going on, I'll tell you what's going on. And so other than that, all telecom, the rest of them are all the companies for the 14% of the world. Lipton tea, by the way, is generic, just like you say Kleenex. Can I have some Kleenex? Has it become generic? The Lipton tea is generic there for the tea bags. So you want tea, you say, give me Lipton. In Saudi Arabia, Procter & Gamble detergent Ariel is generic. So if you want any the detergent, you say, can I have an Ariel, please? Do you want the expensive one or do you want the cheap one? The cheap one is a local, but it's Ariel. Then this map is very interesting. What you see here is that I decided that I want to see if I was going to travel from Austin, Texas, how far could I go in 2 hours or 3 hours? 2 hours, I can go to probably drive to Dallas, excluding that time it takes to go to the airport and so forth. How long it will take me to Chicago? So look at the map here. Within 8 hours, ladies and gentlemen, from this region, you can go all the way to Shanghai. Within 2 hours, you can go to South Asia. You can do South Africa, and you go to the United Kingdom. As a matter of fact, close to 4 billion people within 8 hours are connected with the Arab world. No wonder Dubai is taking advantage of that. No wonder Abu Dhabi is taking advantage of that. And this is what I mentioned about the tourists. Now, why would anybody go to this region if they think that they are going to be terrorized? Can you imagine that if you are going to receive the 70 million people every year, I mean, you have to have a very vibrant hospitality industry, don't you? I mean, you have to have the hotels. Not all are expensive. You have to have the people who serve these tourists like me. And by the way, Egypt even have a law that forget about the religious holidays. A tourist is a tourist. So if you want to take a holiday, you better talk to some of your other workers. Somebody better be there to take care of the tourist. And we are on Nile cruise on Friday afternoon. I could hear the azan from the mosque. And this guy is asking me, and I'm feeling very guilty. I said, could I have a glass of wine? Then I changed my mind. I said, this poor guy is saying azan outside and asking, and he was going to give me that. I said, no, forgive me, just give me a cup of tea. Why would you go if this place was not ready to receive the tourist? Okay? And then here I can also mention that there are 3 million tourists who actually go to for the Hajj, Makkah, and Medina, and from all over the world. About 11,000 go from the United States. This is the most capitalistic venue that you'll ever see in your life. All the companies that you talk to, they say, if we miss that Hajj, we lose 13th month of revenue. 40% of the Sony company's sales, thank you very much, come from Hajj. I mean, I couldn't go, I'm not a Muslim, but I talked to a whole bunch of these people. So what do? They have signs in Urdu. They have signs in Farsi. You name any language from the developing country, they have sign in there. Because all these guys are going there and they're buying all these electronics. Ladies and gentlemen, 7-star hotel in Medina, thank you very much, is run by an Indian chain called Oberoi. And you have to pay $7,000 to get a room there. And guess, and this is next to Allah. And you're wearing that the white cloth. And then you come back and you're sitting in your nice suite. So guess who stays there? Sultans, Egyptians, movie stars, King of Brunei. For heaven's sake, these people have to stay someplace. Cat Stevens. So as a matter of fact, when I interviewed this guy, he says, oh, Cat Stevens is my client. I said, really? Oh, King of Brunei is my client. I said, oh my God. Yusra, she's a very famous Egyptian actress that I interviewed. She's my client. I said, Yusra is your client? He said, yeah. Once in a while, these actresses also think about coming to Makkah and Medina. And our boys, they know it. Procter & Gamble and Unilever and Coca-Cola. Red Bull. How many of you drink Red Bull? Is it Red Bull or no? How many of you drink that? Raise your hands. You drink that? Guess what? Biggest business for Red Bull. First they have right in Jeddah at the airport during that time, because all these guys are so tired, and take Red Bull. And the guy, when I spoke with the guy, you'll see that in the book, he said, Professor, please don't mention this. So what I'm going to do there is that the basic idea that I wanted to, the point that I wanted to get you across was that this religion is not what we think it is. It's totally, totally global connected. And a lot of the stereotypes that we have, that predominantly I think a person like me were basically getting those from the media. Some of them are correct, but this is totally, totally global connected. So at this stage, I'm going to keep quiet, and I'll be happy to discuss about any of this. Ehud.
Okay, I wanted to ask.
By the way, he's my colleague, very smart guy, but I don't like him. He's asked me a very tough question now.
Thank you for the introduction. I wanted to ask you two, I think, close to related things. One is the issue of property rights. And related to that, are there active stock markets or not?
Well, the first answer I would give you there is that close to, and this is, I think, the lower end, 85% of the business are owned by the families, okay, which is very bad. And so what happens there is that rather than having a corporate structure, they have an Islamic structure. And so what happens there is that when it comes to division of the property, my God, it's a very bad news. So right now, it just like happens in other countries. You know, like in India went through with the Ambani brothers. I mean, they are listed in the Mumbai, but after father died and these two brothers started fighting with each other, and it was a disaster. And so I think the bigger disaster can happen in this country, in the Arab world. As a matter of fact, in the chapter, I have kept that as a challenge. So what happens there is the property rights know the way that you and I understand how the property rights should be defined is different from how they will be defining, okay, which I think they are aware of it, and it will change. No, the stock market, the Saudi stock market is quite active. And then, of course, the Dubai. So the culture is not as it is, for example, would be in the US. But at the same time, keep in mind, their average GDP per capita is only 5,000. The 90%, 80% of people still living in the countries where GDP per capita is less than 10,000, other than the GCC countries. And India also didn't have a very active stock market until 15, 20 years ago. But I think they're fully aware of that. Why they're aware of that? Because the private equity companies are very active now. Okay, so you'll see the Abraj, for example, from Dubai, and they were really very big exporters for this book. You would see Citadel Capital coming out of Egypt. And one of their exit strategy really is either to sell or to actually go for an IPO. One very good example of that would be Aramax, which is like the Federal Express in the area. Federal Express, Fadi Gandoor is probably, I would say he's like the Bill Gates or Steve Jobs of the Arab world. He's so entrepreneurial. Went to school in the George Washington University. And so he was the first company from the Middle East to list in the US. He decided to delist it. And then he went with the Abraj, and then he listed his company in Dubai. And many people have become millionaires, including Fadi himself. So I think that culture is coming. The Fadi is really pushing that culture. For the people to think of the listing yourself in the market as a exit strategy. And you would not have heard stories a few years ago when one of the Saudi families were willing to give away their share to a private equity company, but it's happening. You would not have heard one of the Saudi the companies actually selling part of their company to the US company, like Pepsi and Almiraya. They have a strategic alliance. I wouldn't say they have sold each other, but they have strategic alliance. You would not have heard those stories. But no, and also keep in mind that a lot of these young people, it was very interesting to me when I was sitting in a meeting, the same Arabs, like in Saudi Arabia, and they all have different accent. Okay, so if somebody was educated in the UK, they will have the UK accent. If somebody was educated in the US, they will have the US accent. Somebody was educated somewhere in Asia, they will have an Asian accent. And they're all the same Arabs. So I think the education level has gone up. And I think the marketing are getting structured. So I think give them another about 10 or 15 years, even less actually, I think they'll get to that point. Sir?
And with the emergence of the middle class, are you seeing a similar growth in the consumer credit market?
That's a very interesting question. Okay, the middle class is very interesting. Throughout the books, what you're going to see there is that I really believe that the developing countries are really going to be, the growth is really going to be determined by the middle class. Okay? So what happens there, and I don't go to the United Nations, the World Bank to look at their definition. I mean, I don't do that. What I do there is that I go to the advertising agencies and I go to the multinationals. And so many of these companies, not many, all of them, they divide each country by A, B, C, D, E group, they call it. The United States, we have done the same. We have A, B, C, D, E group. Okay, so my friend here, my distinguished colleague from the finance department will be in the A group. And I probably will come into the C group. Okay, but C group is a middle class. So that's the excitement that I discovered about Africa. When I saw the size of the C group, almost 1/3 of Africa, 330 million people in Africa were in C class. And you divide that by average size of the family, which is 5, you get 70 million households. And that's exactly the number people come up with China and India. That's why the book got attention. That number got attention. So in the middle class, what you see here is close to the 50% of the population in the Arab world actually is in the middle class. And other very interesting thing that you discovered there is that the numbers go from everywhere. So that means out of the 350 million people, 175 million people are in the middle class. You divide that by the fertility rate is very high in this region. So some people say the average size is 5, some people say it's 6, but let's say we divide by 5. So you divide 150, the 150 million people by 5, you get about 30, 40 million households. That's a lot of households. Okay, now what do you do about the credit now? So the credit historically is with your local shopkeeper. Okay, so I grew up like that. So my mother would say, just go and get a Coca-Cola. So I'll go to the local shopkeeper. He says, put on my father's account. So that's your credit. At the end of the month, my father would go and he pay them off. No, that has become an issue because in many of the countries, what that means there is the modern trade won't succeed. People won't go to the modern trade because the modern trade doesn't give you the credit. Except some of these people have now figured out that how to convert that to the local credit into the modern trade credit. So the banks decided, so this is a very good example that you will see, for example, in my Africa book. The bank decided that they're gonna, when you go and buy a Coca-Cola and you say, put on my father's account, their father's account is really your account with the bank. So the local shopkeeper is not putting that, the account, he is putting that on the bank's account. So people who did not have the bank account now have a bank account now. So the BMCE bank in Morocco is actually doing that. No, then of course, when you go to GCC countries, people do have the credit cards and all that. So that's where you get into the interesting issues now, that how do you actually give a credit card which is Sharia, makes the compliance. So there you see a lot of very interesting things which are going on. By the way, Sharia compliant, the credit card is also available in the US. There's a bank in Ann Arbor, Michigan. You can get the credit card from them. So in fact, I talked to them. So that's where some interesting issues are coming in. And then of course, if you pay everything off by the end of the month, then there's no interest there. So some of these people, there are different ways that they have come up with. But the credit industry is not that well developed. As a matter of fact, the biggest news yesterday was that Saudi Arabia is going to come up with a mortgage to stimulate the real estate industry, the housing industry in Saudi Arabia. Okay, so I think give them another 10 years, they will have figured that out. But the right now is cash. No, that's a problem now. Let me give you an example. One of the very interesting things in this country there is that when a boy gets married to a girl, he's supposed to have an apartment. Did you know that? You have to have an apartment, otherwise you can't get married. And you can't rent it either. Okay? You have to pay cash. And not only that, you have to have everything in the house. So in Kuwait, of course, the government will take care of it. Oman, government will help you out. In Egypt, nobody helps you. In Sudan, all your colleagues pull in. So they send a sheet to everybody in the company, and everybody writes in, okay, I'll give $100, I'll give $200, I'll give $500, because the boy is also supposed to pay for the marriage. Okay? So no, what you see there is the average age, and we have a slide there. Okay, we'll have to change that. Average age of the marriage age is going up, which also, by the way, is contributing to Arab Spring. Okay, so you will see a 32-year-old girl in Cairo, for example, sitting at the parents' home because the boy cannot come up with $60,000 to buy an apartment. Can you imagine if in this country we have to have an apartment fully paid, fully furnished, before you'll go to a girl's father, you say, may I marry your daughter, please? Nobody in this country, including my son, will ever get married. Okay, so no, that has raised an interesting issue now, that how do you actually really solve the youth problem? And I think that's where the credit is going to come handy. In some of the countries, like for example, Oman, they have started offering this credit for these young people to actually buy the homes. So I think the credit industry, in my opinion, you're going to see many changes occurring in this region in the next 10 to 15 years, because without that, they'll have a tough time in solving many of the problems. What you hope is that they won't get in the same mess that we have gotten here. And I think that's when they have the Sharia compliance that will take care of that. because all the mortgages and all that, there has to be some tangible thing to support it. So, but no, there's a huge opportunity there. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I was surprised by one of your bullets up there that says more consumer-driven than China.
Ah,
Could you tell us a little bit more about
you're
that?
my kind of a guy. You see, from the marketing point of view, there are two very interesting things to me. Okay, so that's how I differentiate myself from the economist. I look at two very critical numbers. Okay, because the World Bank numbers have no meaning to me. One number that I look for is a shadow economy. You know what the shadow economy means? Let's not get carried away. I mean, this is the this is the money we don't tell the government we have. Okay, 9% of us also do in this country. And by the way, 9% of us who do in this country, that's $1 trillion. So $1 trillion in this country, we don't tell our government we have. And $1 trillion will be 70% of India's GDP. Think for a moment. $1 trillion our government doesn't know that we have, and predominantly in the service sector. So that's one number is very interesting to me. Second number, which is very from the marketing point of view, and that's the argument that we make about the Middle East, this is oil, all the oil money, and so on and so forth. Second number, which is very important to me, there is what percent of the economy is controlled by the consumers. Do you know what percent of the economy in this country is controlled by the consumers? Anybody? 70% of our economy is controlled by my daughter and her friends. And if my daughter decides not to buy me a Christmas present, somebody's going to lose a job in Bangladesh. And you take $14 trillion, and you take 70% of that, and given that almost about 26% of the world economy is controlled by the United States, ladies and gentlemen, 20% of the world economy is controlled by you and me, 300 million people in this country. 20% of the world economy. So that's why when we have a recession, the rest of the world is in trouble. Because 20% of the world economy in the hands of me and you. Isn't that scary? That we better elect the right person. We need to get out of this recession. Because otherwise Chinese and Bangladeshi, they're all going to lose their jobs.
So Vijay, if 20% is from the U.S., how's the rest of the world? Who are the other major drivers?
The major will be, the other will be European Union. And in India, for heaven's sake, is only 1.6 trillion. Oh, come on. You know what is the GDP of the state of Texas? How big is the economy in the state of Texas? In fact, one of the bullets I have there is that these guys are rich, they were not as rich. You take all the GCC countries, Saudi Arabia and everybody else, they don't even come close to the GDP of the state of Texas. State of Texas, we are richer than all the oil countries in the Middle East. Yes, seriously. And we'll show you that number. I mean, forget about Saudi Arabia, forget about Kuwait, forget about Qatar. You combine all of them. And they are 35 million, we're only 25 million, and we have a 1.2 trillion economy, almost close to the economy of India. I mean, put that in perspective. And I'll show you that in a minute. But let me answer the question, sir. Where are we now?
We're on 43.
Okay. Where is this is a more, yeah, here it is. So no, why they are more consumer driven? Like I said, the most important number to me there is what percent of the economy is controlled by the consumers. And you will see the numbers for all the countries in the book. And my comparison all with China and India. Okay? So what you see here is the total Arab world average. Saudi Arabia is the worst. Okay, because everything is controlled by the government. So their economy is hardly about the 32 or some percentage is controlled by the consumers. So average is 49. So the total is about $2 billion. And number that you see there is the last number. That is the GDP per capita, which is controlled by the consumers. Controlled by the consumer is about $2,300. So this will be controlled by the consumers in the Arab world. The same number for the China is 1,379, And same number for India is 629. So guess who has more money to spend than Chinese and Indians? Arab world. So from the marketing point of view, this was a very interesting number to make the case. Then my God, there is so much money to be made. But you do find, that not everybody's like that. So if I can go back to some of the slides, how do I go back? Oh, yeah. Here, if you will look at that, this number will tell you that Arab world is 49%, China is 37%, Saudi Arabia is 39%. What that means there is that close to 61% of the economy in Saudi Arabia is controlled by the government. And that's where the oil comes in. And as a matter of fact, when you look at the countries which are below average, UAE, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Libya, these are all oil countries. And these are the ones which are controlled by the government. But average is still 49, which is the bigger than China. So that's what we say, sir, that these markets are more consumer driven than China. And this point was very important to make it to some of the businesses, because the book actually tried to argue that this is as big market opportunity as China and India. And our boys know it. I mean, boys and the girls, they already know it. I mean, they are making money there. Procter & Gamble and Pepsi and, these guys are already making money. Somebody asked me yeah, sir.
How does Turkey fit into all this?
Turkey is not part of the Arab world, and Turkey and Iran, they are not part of the Arab world. I can make comments, but I think I'll digress.
How are they viewed, though, by all these countries? Because their economy is so strong.
Well, the economy is very strong, but what they don't like is their debt. Okay, so their debt ratio as percent of the economy is very high. So these countries, the debt is not very good. So, but I think we'll digress there. But Turkey is doing extremely well, and like I said, the Turks have a huge influence on the region. You already saw that, the media and so on and so forth. Okay, there was what else? Yeah.
I was wondering what advice you have for people like us and how we can go and be successful there, and what opportunities there are.
Well, our world is not for everybody. Because the planet is so beautiful. There's so many the countries on this planet. I think ultimately will be your passion, really, what really excites you. And I think the whole objective of the book was to actually just showcase that we have a lot of the stereotypes, and those stereotypes are not really correct. I tell you, I had fun. I visited so many beautiful synagogues. I visited so many beautiful churches. I even visited a Hindu temple of all the places in Dubai. You go around there in this region and you say, oh my God, these guys are very smart. No wonder 3 religions on this planet has come from here. And then you see the Damascus, you see Syria. I went to Damascus, I went to Aleppo. I fell in love with these 2 cities. Aleppo, when I see that what's going on there actually on the television, I feel so sorry. Can you imagine that during the Silk Road, everything used to stop at Aleppo? And those places are still there. You go to Siratel and you look at all those Roman the ruins and you say, oh my God, these guys are so smart. And you go and see all those mosques and you see all those bazaars. You say, how could these guys design those hundreds and hundreds of years ago? So I think if that's what excites you, this area, just like our kids are going to China, they're going to India, they would find this region very exciting. And since you asked me this question, so I have to really mention about the woman. Would you believe that there are more women who go to colleges in this region than men? Did you know that? Would you believe that there are more women who graduate from colleges than men? And these women are coming back. Man, with gusto. Let me show you some pictures. Yeah, we saw these numbers and said, oh my God, these women are very smart. How many of you know here somebody who has a college degree, even has a graduate degree, but she had decided not to work because she's raising 2 children. Raise your hands. I rest my case. When your most important thing in your life is your family, and you want to make sure that your children get the best out of life, these women are not any different. I mean, if we are doing in this country, why won't they do it? So that's why you see this, the college graduates, master's degree, PhDs, they have just decided that I'm not going to work. And even here in this country right now, after that article showed up in Atlantic Review by this lady who was working for the Obama administration, she's gone back to Princeton, even she's arguing, it doesn't work. I mean, you can't manage your family, you can't manage the job and be aggressive. You have to decide your priorities. Even we are having that discussion. Last issue of Harvard Business Review again had an article on mummy track. We have a tough time how to retain the women in the workforce. Why would there be that difference, especially when they have a culture where everything is around the family? It starts with the family, it ends with the family, and even Quran tells them the mother place is next to the prophet, or next to God. And these men would not make any decision without consulting their mothers. Even if wife gets mad, they have to consult the mother. They would not dare make a decision. And I come from a house like that. My mother was so strong that my father has no say. But when you go out, my mother will be walking 6 feet behind my father, and my father was showing his chest. And all us boys and girls will be laughing, wait till you get home. Thank you so much.